Pakal and CJ are about to land in game in about a week, so we're going to update our legendary tier list to help you figure out which legendaries are the very best investments in July of 2021. Hello my friends and welcome back. I'm Chisgule Gaming, and today we're going to make some bold predictions about how the meta is about to shift with the introduction of new commanders into the game. But before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to tell you about the sponsor of this video, and that is Infinite Galaxy. In Infinite Galaxy, you explore the vastness of space to claim territory, battle fierce foes, and yes, take down other players. In this game, you'll be building a collection of flagships. You'll use those to wage war with your collection of war ships, whether it's the sprightly frigate, the mid-sized destroyer, or the massive cruisers. Your fleet will go head-to-head against opponents in space combat and in the campaign. But it wouldn't be much of a fleet without its crew. Your crew will help define and customize the way that your team works together as you build out the most amazing space station the galaxy has ever seen, building up and constructing things from your headquarters to your military center to make sure you're ready for the next encounter. Along the way, you'll do a ton of research, advancing your space station's capabilities in both situations against players and in situations that help you build up and get stronger. What happens next in this game? Well, my friends, it's entirely up to you. We're 5 months in to playing Infinite Galaxy, and man, I am still loving it playing in Nebula 13. If you'd like to join us, use the link in the description to download the game. That does support the channel, and use code CHISGULEPLAY. CHISGULEPLAY, one word. To get some free stuff, you use that in the redeem section up over here in the settings. You smash pack exchange, drop in the redeem code, and you're good to go. Chisgule Play. I'll even write it in right here. This code is going to work for players who create their account after June 18th. And what are you waiting for? Join us in Nebula 13. We're suspecting some Nebula versus Nebula action is going to fire up sometime in the not too distant future. There's not migration in the game yet, so start in our Nebula. We'll get you set up and off to the races in a great alliance. Oh yeah, baby. This game, heck, I'll see you there. I'm having fun playing it. Oh, and thank you again to Infinite Galaxy for sponsoring this video. Now, if you've seen one of my tier list videos before, you know that I rank every commander from S tier, which is like the very best, all the way down to A, B, C, and even D. And I do pluses and minuses to try to differentiate between which are slightly better and which are slightly worse. This also has historically laddered directly into my epic tier list, and I'll have a card up in the top if you want to check out that video. The categories that we rate for include city defense, barbarians and forts, open field, rallying cities, rallying objectives, defending objectives, and canyon. And some of these things I'll move through pretty quickly because very little has changed, but the categories that will need the most attention include open field, rallying cities, defending and rallying objectives, and of course, canyon. So let's start things off very briefly with a review of the very best city defense commanders, and little has changed here at all. I'll flash that rating up on the screen now. The king of city defense is actually not Zenobia, not YSS, but it's Theodora. And that is because at the start of a rally, you want to pummel an enemy so much that they chicken out and you never even get below 50%. And if you're super strong, that is entirely possible. Zenobia is fine, but the healing makes her less than amazing, and I've slightly downranked Wu Zetian from where I had her before. Like, she's good, but she probably is not the same tier as YSS, so I put her down to an S-. Otherwise, this is pretty much the same. Now, for barbarians and forts, there's really very little that has changed at all with this latest tier list. Moctezuma is presumably good, but basically nobody's expertise to him except one player in our last KVK who forgot to push the button to actually unlock the expertise skill, so we'll really never know exactly how good Moctezuma is unless somebody actually maxes this dude and does some testing. Moving very quickly, let's talk now about open field. And I'll admit, I'm not perfect, I make mistakes. One of my mistakes in the last round was slightly downranking YSG. I don't know, I bumped him down to an S-. He's really an S. I picked him back up by his bootstraps, all right? He's freaking amazing. YSG, he's S tier. And I've refined my list, by the way, to include the commanders at the S tier and really differentiate between like what is best of the best and what is a tier below that or slightly below that, okay? And another commander I have slightly underestimated historically is actually Cyrus the Great. He really is better than I had estimated for the open field. He's got several things that I just think are so crucial for open field. Debuffs, area of effect damage, and march speed. That's really the trio of things you need, and he has all of those. It's just they're in a sort of weird package of 10% chances to trigger, but it's still like really quite good. Heck, he's even got instant proc damage, which is very, very strong in open field combat, and maybe that would even be the fourth thing that I would say is just really compelling. The other commander I have just hugely underestimated, especially as the meta has now shifted toward Trajan and skill damage, who, by the way, Trajan, I'm still giving him. Others would do differently here, but I'm giving Trajan still the S+, the best of the best, because he's just so transformative for the open field. You look at the Ark of Osiris League championship teams, and you can almost just like count the Trajans, and like that's the team that's going to win the center brawl. I mean, that's not exactly true, and I don't know, maybe exaggerating here, but you get the idea. Trajan is just freaking amazing, but since everybody is now moving to having all marches that do all skill damage to really take full advantage of what Trajan brings to the table, now skill damage is really in favor. And I said this ages ago that Tamaris is going to be meta when skill damage is meta. And guess what? Tamaris is back, baby. Tamaris, I would put her at an S. I'm bumping her up a bunch from the previous rating that I had her at. You put her with Artemisia, and that's the pair you use. Edward, not good. Don't do that. Tamaris, now we're talking. Now, in order to really differentiate between the very best and the things that are not quite as good but are still strong, I actually took a jab or two at some really popular commanders. I've slightly bumped down Attila and Takeda. They're great, but they don't do area of effect damage. They don't do skill damage, which kind of sucks. I mean, yeah, they've got some march speed, and they actually do have some debuffs and some tankiness, right? They're still great. S- is still amazing. They're just not the very top tier. Also, weirdly enough, I think Harold is really good, but I did bump him down a little bit. I think most people might not agree with that choice of moving him down to S-. The thing about his area of effect damage is that it's reactive. He has to be attacked in order for it to happen. And so I just don't love that about his kit. The other thing that I don't exactly love is that he doesn't really have any debuffs. So he's not making the rest of your murder ball more amazing by virtue of being there. I've also slightly bumped down Saladin. And honestly, that's to make room for XY, who's a freaking monster. I mean, I've got him at an S. I think I had him at an S before. Area of effect damage on a cavalry commander is amazing. To make room for that commander at S tier, I slightly bumped down Saladin because, look, if I'm choosing between the two, I would take the max XY pretty much any day of the week over a Saladin primary. Not to say that Saladin primary is bad. Don't get the wrong idea here. Heck, I'm even using, I'm not gonna lie, a 5-5-1-1 XY in Canyon, and it's just that good, okay? It's just that good. And I know we're not talking about Canyon now. We'll get there. But that's where I would rank them. And for the new commanders, by the way, I don't think they're going to be all that amazing in the field. They have march speed, one of the ingredients. They don't have debuffs, okay? And they don't have area of effect damage. So these two commanders, like, I think they're going to be fine. They might be important role players with another commander that's really important, but it's the same problem that Harold has. Like, he's great, but not really a must-answer threat in the sort of same way that a commander that does huge area of effect damage and debuffs would be. So I clock in the two new commanders at S-, and honestly, I don't know. There is a little bit of AoE on CJ. It's true. He's got a small amount of AoE, but I don't think I can rank him any higher than an S- for now. When it does come to rallying cities, I've got to hand it to Attila Takeda. They're still really good. I was chatting with Cortex about this to try to understand, like, what do you think about the relationship between Attila Takeda and XY Chandragupta? Which one is better? And the place that we kind of landed is that if you're below a certain amount of power, the city that you're rallying, the Attila Takeda is probably better. They're just too effective. And if you're above a certain amount of power, you probably want the Chandragupta paired with XY. Maybe that number is like 100 million, but I'm sort of shooting from the hip on that. That's what Cortex recommended. And I mean, it sounds right. I don't have any actual data to back up that conclusion, but I think Attila Takeda, I'm going to leave them at S+, okay? I think they're amazing. You can send them. You can forget about them. Send them like 20 minutes away. And honestly, it almost like doesn't even matter. But I did bump up Chandragupta and XY for hitting cities. Man, they are just too freaking good. And all those sculptures back in the day that I took out of Chandragupta and put into other commanders, who knew I'd be looking at Chandragupta again, wondering if, do I put the sculptures back into this commander? The rest of the ratings for rallying cities, I pretty much left the same. I mean, the meta rally right now, it's Cavs. It's either Attila Takeda for hitting a city, or it's Chandragupta XY. And on the topic of XY with Chandragupta, we do need to talk about the very best rally for objectives in the game. This is flags, this is forts, and it's definitely XY with Chandragupta. XY now taking the S+. Secondary really should be Chandragupta. You could use William theoretically, but I just don't think that's the same tier as using the XY with Chandra. Now, there are other commanders that are still great, and I think, honestly, if I were being really predictive here, I actually think XY is about to be displaced entirely. So the best rally now is XY Chandragupta. I think, depending on how Pakal's kit really works, and I want to see it before I give it the rating, but I think Pakal with Herald is going to be the very best. That's going to be the rally. And will it be good enough to be a Zenobia killer? I doubt it. Will it maybe start to edge out on those trades, though? It is conceivable. So I'm definitely going to be looking for that. And I bumped down a bunch of commanders to try to, I think, present a more realistic picture of where I think they are relative to the New World Order. I bumped down Attila Takeda for rallying objectives. I mean, honestly, if you're doing this in July of 2021, something has gone wrong, okay? Looking at other commanders, I bumped down Esong. I had him probably higher than I should have before. I bumped down Alexander the Great, who's like, I just don't think the Alex Herald rally is all that exciting, especially in a world with Pakal. Like, nah, I don't think so. Nebu I had to bump down because he was the S+ rally before, and people are still using Ramses and Nebu, by the way. Like, people are still rallying with these archers because it's the best archer rally at your disposal. And, you know, sometimes you got to just have a way to send some archers to die in KVK. That's a pretty good way to do it. It's still a really good rally. Now, when it comes to defending objectives, guess what? Literally nothing has changed from my previous predictions. Even the ranking that I had given Jadwiga is still good. She's an S. I think that's fair. She's really good. Pair her with YSS, and that's the jam. Zenobia, pair with YSS. It's really good. Like, really good. I suppose you could make an argument that maybe it's the YSS that deserves the S+ rating instead of the Zenobia, because that's what you pair with both. But at the end of the day, these ratings are all about the same, and I'm really not sure that Pakal and CJ are going to change who you garrison with. Like, I don't think that will be the case. Maybe they're doing enough skill damage that you want to use Wu Zetian, but that doesn't sound at all right to me. I just think the garrison meta is still here, and it's about the same as where it was previously. This brings us to the final category, which is Canyon. And I hate to say it, but I really don't think that CJ or Pakal are going to majorly shift the Canyon meta in Rise of Kingdoms in July of 2021. And I'll probably end up, eating my words on that one at some point. I gave him both A+. Maybe Pakal, maybe, because he is pretty tanky, okay? He could be a pretty cool offlane commander, right? Like, maybe Pakal Herald is still a really good offlane. Maybe that's so good that it perhaps is better than some of the meta offlanes that other people are using. Maybe you're going to pair him with Guan, but I just can't imagine that being better than Leo. So maybe A+ is too low, but that's where I'm putting that rating right now. There are commanders I did need to bump up, and I have to say, I told you already, XY I'm using in Canyon 5511 changed my life. Life-changing to put that in the lineup because I already had William expertise. Saladin William was just so-so in Canyon, but XY William, now that is the freaking jam. So I bumped up my rating of William slightly. I also bumped up Mulan's rating because now that more and more people are really going all in on Trajan, you don't have the buffs that you used to get from Joan of Arc. And there was a little bit of a mismatch and sort of overwriting of buffs with Mulan and Joan of Arc. But when you don't have Joan of Arc in the lineup anymore, because you've replaced her with Trajan, now all of these buffs from Mulan, the attack, the defense, and the health, apply for every march, which is actually really good. So people are starting to key into the front lane of having both Trajan and Mulan, potentially in different marches entirely, and it is really very strong. Do I think it's the best thing? I don't know that that's necessarily the case, but it is very good. Now, there are a couple commanders I actually, for the sake of differentiating between like the best of the best and what's next, I've bumped down, and I slightly bumped down Alexander the Great. And look, I still use him, okay? So don't get me wrong. I'm using Guan Alex, and if that's what you got, that's what you got. But Leo is just way better, like way better than the Alex, and I needed a way to differentiate that, which I've now accomplished with this tier list. Also, I bumped down slightly the Attila Takeda combo. Like, I don't know. That's not the off lane that people at the top are using. You can use it, okay? It's still an A+, but it's just not what you're seeing at the top end of things. Also, Richard I, I slightly bumped him down. Oh, look, the reality is that if you're not in the Season of Conquest, he's amazing. And even if you are in the Season of Conquest and you're newer to it, like, yeah, it's still really, really, really good. But at the very top end, that's probably not what you're going to see. Even Ethelfled, I bumped down slightly because she is being replaced with other marches in Canyon. And just to show you what the top of the Lost Canyon list looks like at this moment, here are a few of those teams. You can see Trajan Constantine in the front. You probably got Guan Leo in the front. That Leo's not even maxed. And then, man, the XY with William is so good. Nebu Isong, and in this case, they are using an Alex Herald offlane, which is good, but not as good as the Artemisia Ramses offlane. Shadow Adams got a really solid team. He's using the Richard, right? I'm not saying you can't use Richard. I'm just saying when it comes to like really top tier front lanes, here's a great example. This is the perfect example right here. Using the Constantine Mulan Trajan Ethel combo in the front is really savage. The Artemisia Ramses offlane is really in right now because people are trying to use offlanes with Alex and Herald, which is very good, but it's countered heavily by using these archers. And honestly, there's not a great offlane for Cavs right now. Not really. Like maybe Saladin Takeda, but people aren't really doing it. So the Artemisia Ramses is just crushing people right now for the offlane. Here it is again. The front row is, Guan Leo. It looks like Miss Vic took their Mulan out of their lineup, and they're falling back on the Richard and Charles, which I think is kind of interesting. They had Mulan in there before. I actually felt like maybe the Mulan was stronger, but do they know what they're doing? Guan Leo, and you've got Trajan Constantine in the front lane again. Yup. Skittles got some really solid stuff going on. Trajan Constantine and a Guan Alex in the front. I mean, you get the idea for what some of these top Canyon teams look like. A lot of these teams have started to incorporate the XY with William, and I just think it's a huge mistake if you have access to those commanders to kind of not be using them, especially if you've got some really good Cav gear. It's just really freaking strong right now. This, of course, brings us to the overall rating for commanders, and I mean, I gotta just keep giving it to Isong, man. If there's any one legendary you're going to invest in this game, it's Isong. He defends your city. He's good for AoE barb farming value. He's great in the open field. He's fine for rallying cities. Not amazing, but still used, which is insane. He's great for rallying objectives. Not the best of the best, but like if you pair him with Nebu, it's still pretty okay. I mean, like, he's good at defending objectives because his area of effect damage is going to kill so many freaking troops. And he's, in my opinion, the S+ in Canyon, because hitting multiple marches in the way that he does is just extremely overpowered. Now, I did bump down Attila Takeda. Rip Attila Takeda, but not really rip. They're still great, right? They're still great as a pair, but just not the best of the best. And I reserved that for Alexander the Great, XY, Nebu Ramses, Guan Yu, Artemisia. Like, those are really, I think, a cut above as commanders overall. They're just so good in so many game modes and are really among the best at what they do. Yeah, they're just undeniably exceptional. Now, just below them, I've got William and Chandragupta, Cyrus and Harold, and many of these other commanders that are still, like, really fantastic. Heck, I've even got Trajan at S-. Maybe he should be a little bit higher, but he really kind of only does, like, one thing. It's open field. Like, that's it. And, like, yeah, you can use him in Canyon too, right? So, I guess technically two things, but he's really sort of a open field Joan of Arc replacement, and that is very, very strong. But I don't know, maybe he should actually be an S overall. I did slightly bump down Constantine overall. Not that Constantine is bad, but I think the reality is that, like, we're just not using Constantine in the Garrison at all these days, and I'm not even using him in the field. Like, he's really just got one role for me, and that's Canyon. I'm not saying he's bad in the field, although he doesn't have march speed, and I guess he's got a debuff, and he does have a nice buff, right? So he's fine, but he doesn't have area of effect damage. Like, he's just okay. Okay, for open field, he's just okay. I bumped him down to an A+. Maybe that's a little aggressive. Tamaris, I have at A+. Maybe she should be a little bit higher. And, you know, the new commanders, I'm clocking them in at an S-. I think that they are missing a little bit of what I would want to see for, like, an amazing open field commander, right? Debuffs, area of effect damage, big area of effect damage. I know this guy, CJ's got a little, but, like, meh. And I think between these two commanders, probably Pakal has the highest potential as a rally commander to really shake things up for the rally meta, and maybe there'll be an answer in Garrison that changes how things go. But let me know what you think of these predictions and this meta ranking down below in the comments. I know it's not perfect, okay? There's now so many commanders, it's hard to honestly fit this diagram on the screen. Like, maybe I just need to stop doing that. I don't know. I might even have to cut it into, like, two separate rankings, like all the Garrison commanders ranked and then, like, everything else. But if you're wondering what Chisgule's thinking in July of 2021, this is a pretty darn good representation of what I think the best commanders are. And tune in tomorrow, subscribe if you haven't already, for a video walking through what I think the 5 or 6 best marches are in July of 2021. Again, if you found this at all helpful, throw a like on here and consider subscribing. It supports the channel. And thanks again to the sponsor, Infinite Galaxy. Until next time, you have fun, smash in the kingdom, and the link is down below if you want to join us in Infinite Galaxy Nebula 13.